Announcing a keynote conversation, exclusive preview on the FreeWheel Video Monetization Report Q1 2017, content, experiences, and engagement in the new dynamic living room. Please welcome to the stage Jack Rotherham, Chief Marketing Officer, FreeWheel, a Comcast company.
So what I'd like to do is do a little bit of background in terms of literally why I am here, if you're wondering. And then just go through about 5 key themes from the report itself, and hopefully that will give you something to take away. And I will say, if you've been here since the morning, I think it's going to make a little bit of sense as to not only why we're here, but what we're doing as a company. So let's get started. Maybe to state the obvious, but if you were here all morning, and certainly in the business at large, there's no denying that TV has always been the king, if you will, of the media landscape. And I don't think that has ever been more true than today. Certainly, we are living in perhaps the overused phrase of the new golden age of TV. But whether it was these great people on stage today, or even James Corden this morning, talking about, God bless you, what he sees in terms of not only his content on air with his partners at CBS, but now his new partnership with Apple News. The ecosystem, if you will, has not only exploded, but it's really grown on many, many levels. So I am not the expert in terms of content production or creation, but borrowing a stat from our friends at FX, you can see here, and you probably know this already, that original series, scripted, has been increasing almost 7x over the last 6 years. So there's a ton of content in the ecosystem, and not just content, but premium, TV style, highly produced, highly engaging content, which is not only good for the business at large, but let's be fair, for us as consumers. With that, this is a little bit less of a complex slide. It's our own estimate. There has been a literal explosion of viewing devices and choices to experience that content. So if you think about OTT and set-top box VOD, of course, your smartphone and tablets and desktops, if you will. You can now experience great content, great TV-style content, anywhere and anytime you'd like. So what does that all mean, and why are we here? The name of my company is FreeWheel. We've been around for 10 years with a single purpose, which is to help leading TV publishers, broadcasters, cable entities, operators, monetize their content through technology systems and platforms, not only on the desktop, but across now every screen. And we are very, frankly, proud that we power the TV ad businesses across IP environments for the world's largest media and entertainment companies, not just here in the US, but globally now as well. So what do we do? This slide looks a little bit boring, and if I could ad-lib a little bit, I was at a holiday party, true story. I live back in New York, and I don't know if you know the news anchor Kate Snow. She happens to live in my town for NBC. And she came over to me and she said, "Hey, I heard you work for Comcast. What do you do?" I said, "Well, we have technology that powers the world's..." And I could see her eyes glazing and glazing and glazing. I'm like, oh, I'm losing the opportunity here. I said, "Actually, we help NBC monetize your content anywhere anyone watches it." She's like, "Really? Let's get a drink." So in short, we are a technology company that happens to have a position with probably about 90% of the leading premium TV providers across the US ecosystem, and growing rapidly across the US. And what that does, and why we're here today, it allows us to see not only consumption, but ad experiences and monetization trends that I hope will be relevant for you today. So let's take a look. This is the unifying TV landscape. I don't know if it's unifying anymore. I think it has completely converged, but I think it's safe to say in maybe less than 3 years or 5, we won't be saying TV and digital anymore. It will just be all video. And I think we're all leaning towards that. But let's take a look at what we saw for Q1 2017, which is Jan, Feb, March, just to clarify. And we have 5 key takeaways for you today. The first, and probably already implied, is premium video as its own ecosystem, if you will. Digital TV-like content and monetization continues to scale. It's not the little brother anymore. It has been growing at a double-digit rate now for close to 25 straight quarters. It's almost like the Warriors, if you will. Sorry for your Clipper fans. Second, consumers, as echoed already, are continuing to gravitate towards this TV-style content that I mentioned, but in digital environments. And the good news is, whether it be our friends at Hulu or Amazon perhaps, the experience now is a premium experience. It wasn't like that 2-3 years ago. So I think the consumer is finding their way. And no surprise, with consumption of content comes monetization. And video ad views are now increasingly happening back on the big screen and what we're calling the new living room. And we'll give a little color into that. Lastly, it's not all good. Frankly, companies like mine and many others I mentioned have a challenge. The user experience from an ad experience in terms of receiving this premium content is not what it should be. And that needs to be fundamental, and it is critical to the future growth of the industry at large. And finally, we'll take a quick look at Europe and how their trends are showing similar but also different, I guess you would say, habits, if you will, with regards to monetization. So very quickly, no surprise here, 25 quarters of double-digit growth. And I think the key takeaway here, if you will, is that we have critical mass now. So as much as it is a big, colorful, double-digit year-over-year growth chart, it is truly about the scale has arrived. Now let me pause here. A little bit of a, not complex, but interesting chart. What we're looking at here, Q1 2016 versus Q1 2017, a bit of a year-over-year comparison. Content format composition, looking at clips, 0 to 5 minutes, episodic, 5+ minutes, and live. Those 2 bars on the far left. What you're seeing now for Q1 2017 is that episodic and live content make up close to 85% of what's being monetized in our ecosystem right now. Clips are not necessarily trending down in a bad way, but it's the episodic, again, that TV-style content, and most importantly, live. You can see the jump for live coming up. And a little bit more color on what live is doing. Historically, it's been very sports-driven. I'm sure some of you are watching Game 5 last night on your phones or on a tablet somewhere. Close to 80% is sports. But now in Q1, we're seeing news, maybe for the wrong reason, maybe giving everything going on right now in the world we live in, has almost doubled to 16%. So good trends in terms of both content and how people are consuming it. As mentioned earlier, with the consumption of the content comes the monetization. And this is a very, I think you would say, interesting trend analysis from Q1 2013 up to today, looking at where that monetization is happening across which digital and IP environments. Desktop, as you can see in the blue, has been the predominant source for that monetization. However, it's now only 31% of the total mix. Set-top box really wasn't around more than 2 years ago, is scaling now to almost 16%, with a jump of 33% year over year. But the real story is here, OTT. Not really around much, again, 2-3 years back. It is now at 32%, the single largest monetization channel for digital video in the business today, just surpassing desktop. Mobile is still happening with both smartphone and tablet, but you can see between OTT and set-top box data, it's now close to 50% of consumption and monetization, and that is happening on the big screen in your living room, and in all fairness, with no brand safety issues, no viewability issues, and none of those digital concerns, if you will, that you might hear in the trades or otherwise. So what can we tell you here? Ad completion rates. What does that mean? We all watch video. We all sometimes skip the ad if you get the opportunity. We all sometimes drop off. What we wanted to do with this chart is to take a look, looking at pre-roll alone. You know what pre-roll is? It's the ad you get before you're entitled to watch the content, if you will. 70% is the completion rate for people watching clips. So 7 out of 10 hang in there, view the ad, and then they get on with their short form clip. Close to 90% at 87 and 88% are allowing the ad to play out, hopefully leading to a change in behavior for both full episode and live. So viewers, in all fairness, are showing a healthy appetite for ad-supported content. If you look at mid-roll, where the ad is held until the middle of the stream, if you will, the content stream, it's close to 100% for both full episodes, so maybe a Hulu show you're watching, or perhaps a game, at 98 and 97%. However, all is not well there. In fact, we launched an advocacy group on behalf of the industry a couple of years ago called the Council for Premium Video. And just in Q4, we did a survey with over 250 ad agencies and leading marketers. And we wanted to ask them, what did they see in terms of the challenges that we're facing as an industry today? And over 50%, the number one concern was the ad experience. And this will not go away easily. It's going to have to be supported by the ecosystem at large, and certainly by the brands and the agencies, but also by companies like ours. And finally, Europe. You can see here, in terms of video starts, lots of activity over there. Lots of content consumption, 80% year-over-year growth. However, the monetization is trailing a little bit. Probably the half-full explanation of that is a lot of opportunity. Europe has been a little slow in terms of, they had some rights dynamics to fight through, but now there's a lot of partnership going on between operators and broadcasters, and we'll see a lot of opportunity, I think, in Europe for the monetization trend to continue. And one last slide, in terms of Europe, a little bit of a comparison, looking again at those devices, desktop, set-top box VOD, OTT, smartphone, and tablet. You can see desktop predominantly at 31%, still leading the pattern, if you will, in Europe. But again, here comes OTT at 19%. Set-top box not as much, and mobile is still relatively strong. So I guess the takeaway here is digital ad views in Europe are happening on a mobile basis, but the living room, the new living room, is coming back as well. And that's it. Except I'd like to invite Andrew up to the stage to have a little chat.
It was a great set of slides. I think it's the kind of data that everyone in this audience needs to be engaged with, because you're talking about seismic shifts. Let's start from the beginning. The unifying world, yep. You say 3 to 5 years to the unified world.
Correct.
What is it going to take in those 3 to 5 years to get to unified?
Well, I think you could say the folks in this room, perhaps on the content side, are doing their part. But the ecosystem, if you will, and you probably know this from your view, there's a lot of participants in the middle of that food chain. So without going into the weeds too soon, something like measurement, which is we all know that Nielsen has been the predominant, pretty much the only currency for what we knew as the TV business for the last 70 years. All those devices we're seeing right now, there is no single currency right now. Mm-hmm. So I think you heard Dave Morris say earlier today, the upfronts are upon us. There's about $19 billion in transactions to be had over the next 4 weeks or so. And it's a little bit splintered. But the brands and the agencies are still going to make commitments, not only, of course, for on-air, but they have to take positions now across all these devices. But there's work to be done.
But video views, as you said, 25 consecutive quarters of growth. I mean, is this go another 25 quarters out? Is this growth just beginning, or?
Well, I think we wanted to make the point that, you know, if you looked at just percentages year over year, they're down a couple of ticks. But I think that's easily explained and fairly with the notion that we're approaching that critical mass, that you just can't have 30, 40% growth year over year for the next 25 quarters. So maybe we're reaching the, I wouldn't say the capacity point. There's certainly room. And the great thing is content doesn't seem to be slowing down in any way. And consumers are really getting more and more comfortable with controlling their own viewing schedules and locations, if you will.
But not so comfortable that 50% of them are saying, hey, clean up that ad experience.
Correct. Well, 50% of the brands and agencies are saying we need to do better. And you probably know it. It's not pleasing. And you know, we've been conditioned, I think, in the digital ecosystem based on display ads, if you will, that there's no value there of sort. There's an opportunity here to create plenty of economic opportunity for publishers and tech companies, but it's got to be done with the right experience.
Set-top and OTT seems to be taking, you said almost 50%. I was surprised that your mobile options were so low. Go another some years out, I assume that will grow?
Well, you know, it's funny because we go back and forth sometimes in our company with the expression, it's just TV. TV is TV. And you know, we don't necessarily own the definition rights, if you will, for what it is. No one does, for that matter. But I think what you're seeing with set-top box and OTT is that people still look forward to the living room experience. To if you're going to watch a show like Billions, you know, I've watched that on my phone on the train just to catch up. But nothing beats sitting on the couch with your wife and you know, on your own schedule and watching that content that you look forward to with, frankly, a pleasing experience.
Although more and more I find myself, even in my own home, just last night watching, you know, the Warrior game on mobile, even though I'm in next to a room that has a bigger screen.
Now, why did you do that?
Well, because sometimes I'm not.
You're going against my narrative here.
Well, let's stay with me here. Stay with me here. How fixed are these patterns of behavior, especially because also, you know, there's a lot of simultaneous media usage as well.
Right. Well, look, I have 3 soon-to-be teenagers. As of August, there'll be 3 teenagers, and they scatter at night sometimes, and they say they're going to go watch TV, and they don't have TVs in their room.
Right.
Right. It's you know, look, we don't have all the answers, nor can we predict what's going to happen for the next 25 quarters. But it's clear the consumer is responding to the content that's being created with many, many new participants in that. I mean, if you look at what Jill's doing with Amazon, it's fascinating. Netflix and Hulu and Handmaid's Tale. It is truly a renaissance, if you will, for the consumer to experience great content. But we have to make sure that experience is not only pleasing, but I'll say it is monetizing the way it should be. So those producers are getting paid what they should be getting, and the brands get the outcomes they're looking for with advertising, and hopefully everyone's happy.
Netflix obviously is famously ad-free. You still see that there is going to be enough consumer appetite for good ad-supported experience at a time when one of the leading players out there is kind of training them to do without?
I don't know. You know, I mean, Netflix is a phenomenon. Reed Hastings saw something that no one else did, but I think you can say it's still about content creating the economic value chain. That said, you look at someone like a Hulu, who's doing a lot of experimenting. One subscription rate with ads, one without. And I think that probably the bottom line is we'll never see the single currency, well, obviously for network phenomenon that we saw 50 years going back. But now there's so much choice. The game is to not only connect it all, if you will, and so that the TV ecosystem not only monetizes as it should, but it needs to be the dominant medium that it should be. So,
the slide that sort of broke out how clips were doing versus long form and live, and it was interesting to see growth in live. That is driven. Does news and sports come under live? What else comes under there?
It's news and sports is about 88% of it. So,
right. Is there anything else?
I don't know. I mean,
unscripted live, maybe events like Grammys and such.
Yeah, I guess so. Although that would be entertainment, I guess.
Right.
But I think for something like that, whether it be the Grammys or the Tonys, people want to go home and see it on their big screen. But if you were traveling last night and you wanted to see Game 5, depending on where you were, I think we're used to now being able to take in. I came home Friday night from Chicago, saw a Cubs game, which was fantastic, and we were in the car coming home. I was not driving, and Game 4 was on, and it was a great experience. But I couldn't wait to get home to put it on the big screen.
Sports, you think, is sort of the big driver in terms of video's growth? Genre-wise, anything else touch that?
Well, it has been here, and if you think about what's coming next year, certainly with the Olympics and the World Cup, you're seeing it in Europe as well. There's a lot happening. Discovery, I think you probably know, is getting into the sports content business in a very, very big way. But I think news, as we saw, it's still not a quarter of what sports is doing, and maybe people were tuning in for the wrong reason. Did he really say that? Did he really tweet that? I think people are going to get into a rhythm of tuning in, if you will, no matter where they are.
Right.
So,
well, with news, though, I think there might have been a sense that post-election there would be a decrease. Wouldn't that typically be what happened? But we're in a special case now, aren't we?
Special case is probably a good word for it.
We're not here to discuss politics.
Yeah, I don't think we should go there. We can talk about the Clippers if you want.
Sure. Well, no, I mean, to my previous question, in sports, you're seeing that now as more of a global phenomenon. It's not just a U.S.
global
thing.
phenomenon. And I don't see that stopping anytime soon. I mean, it's a big business, obviously. You look at ESPN and some of the, I would just say, the perceptions around their economic model are partly due to the rights that they're paying for that content. You're talking billions and billions of dollars over 3, 5, 10, 20 years. So I think the bets are being made still on sports, but I think that the window of content that people are going to get into the habit of watching is going to go beyond that.
Europe, that last slide, the monetization lagging the way it is, what is going to help close the gap there?
There's a lot of, I will say, attention being paid to the gaps they have to close. I think I mentioned briefly the broadcasters and the operators are doing more together. There was always a funny dynamic around rights and they're hacking through that, if you will. And I think Europe has always been somewhat of a, I don't want to say follower, but in a business sense, they tend to draft behind the U.S. consumption trends, and I think we're starting to see the beginning of that. So,
well, it'll be interesting to follow those trends and a lot more. Thanks for coming by with these great digits.
Thanks for having me.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody.